So probably the most overlooked and underrated positional group in fantasy football would be the offensive line. Every year we go in talking about QBs, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, but we do not spend enough time looking at offensive line groups. If we take the time to look at these groups, it will help determine the real possibility and outcomes that we can expect from all of our positional players that we actually draft in fantasy football. All right, so hopping back into the rankings at number 1 through number 5, going in reverse order. At number 5, we have the Washington Commanders. For the Commanders last year, they were ranked 9th in pass block win rate. They were 2nd in run block win rate. That's the one that's kind of weird to me, is because I don't really remember feeling that they were all that explosive in the run game. That could have a lot more to do with Brian Robinson Jr. Having watched the tape, I do feel like he wasn't very explosive last year. As far as the season went, the Commanders' offensive line really came on as the season went. The unit kind of gelled more and more well together. Cliff Kingsbury was able to get that offensive unit kind of more clicking throughout the last 4 weeks of the season. They were top 5 in pretty much every category for the offensive line play. That's another big reason why I said that they're ranked so high, is I think that their potential going into the end of the season, it was dramatically higher than it was at the beginning of the season. And obviously most people had them ranked as a bottom 10 offensive line going into 2024. With the addition of Jaden Daniels, obviously, he's able to elevate that offensive line, take a little bit of pressure off of them. The other reason why I'm projecting them to be at number 5 is the addition of Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. He is one of the highest rated left tackles in the NFL. I know last year the Texans' offensive line didn't do very well holistically overall, but at that left tackle position where Laramie Tunsil was, he did perform especially well in pass block win rate. The Commanders also made a decision this year to draft Josh Connolly in the first round of the NFL draft. So just adding some more talent and some more depth to that offensive line. I also believe going into year 2, kind of what we saw at the end of the season, Cliff Kingsbury kind of has his unit figured out. The addition of Laramie Tunsil and Josh Connolly, I think, is going to prop up and make this offensive line perform even better than it did at the end of last season. And again, having Jaden Daniels as your quarterback, who's very mobile, is also very helpful and takes a little bit of pressure off the offensive line play to play. So that is why I have the Commanders at number 5. All right, so for the teams that are ranked 4 through 2, I think you can kind of flip any of these teams out. So don't hate me if I have your team ranked at 4 or 3 or 2, or they're not even on this list, then I really apologize, but it is what it is. So there is a lot of flexibility between all these spots. But at the number 4 unit, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they were 5th last year in pass block win rate. They were 6th in run block win rate. The last month of the season, they were still top 10 in the majority of categories, but they started to struggle a little bit more. Some of the reasons that I have the Bucs at number 4 is there's no higher rated tackle in pass protection than Tristan Wirfs. He is pretty much the elite of the elite. He's kind of on his own little island by himself. The guy is just amazing. They only allowed 19 sacks last season. They had a clean pocket percentage of about 74% of the time. So the Bucs had the lowest pressure rate on their QB Baker Mayfield out of any QB in the NFL. Another big piece for the Bucs and why I have them at number 4 is they are returning all of their starters next season. I do expect them to at least be able to hold a spot in the top 5. Top 10 is like the worst case scenario, but top 5 is very realistic, and it's not hard to, again, like I said, imagine them being in 3rd or 2nd by the end of the season, respectively speaking, because at 4, 3, and 2, they're all pretty interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. So next at number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I know it's kind of probably a surprising one for some people out there, probably like the Washington Commanders was. But again, this is not just all based off of last year. This is also based off of projections. So for the Baltimore Ravens, they were 3rd in both pass block win rate as well as run block win rate. The biggest thing for the Ravens was at the beginning of the season, they were starting 3 new guys at the offensive line. It was pretty choppy, pretty sloppy for the first, maybe quarter of the season. As the year went along under Harbaugh, they were able to make this offensive line more cohesive. That is the reason why by the last 4 weeks of the season, the Ravens were again top 5 in pretty much every statistical category as far as offensive line play went. If we're looking at deep dive statistics for the Ravens, though, they were 4th in overall sack rate, and they were also 6th in sack rate against the blitz. Obviously, Lamar helps bail them out to a certain extent, but watching tape, there's a lot of clean pockets for the Ravens. Again, it wasn't so prevalent in the beginning of the season, but as it went along and towards the very end of the season, they were on fire as an offensive line unit. I do expect the Ravens to be able to take another step up next year. They did draft some more depth this year at the offensive line unit. in the draft. So I do expect them to not only have a better starting unit, but to have a little bit more depth that can help fill in as players potentially go down with injuries throughout the season. So at number 2, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. There's not a lot of franchises that are able to hang their hat on the thought that their offensive line for the last however many years has been elite and in the top echelon of offensive line units. Last year, the Eagles only allowed 13 sacks to Jalen Hurts, which again is at a very super elite level. Obviously, Jalen Hurts does help out with that quite a bit, but still a lot of that comes down to overall offensive line play. Last season, Jalen Hurts also had the second longest time to throw out of any QB in the NFL, and their yard before contact per attempt for Saquon last season was also pretty dang high as well. Again, you can attribute some of that to Saquon, but the offensive line unit for their run blocking was elite as well. It's pretty clear that that's true too, that it's not 100% just on Saquon Barkley. Looking at previous seasons with DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, their numbers were significantly elevated running behind the offensive line for the Eagles, and then when they went to other teams, it fell off a cliff. So for the Eagles last season as well, they were 6th overall in pass block win rate, and they were 9th overall in run block win rate. I do anticipate the Eagles to remain in the top 5 of offensive line units going into next season. I know that there are people out there who are thinking that they're number one, but that they're not number 1, unfortunately speaking. One of my biggest concerns for the Eagles going into 2025, and the reason why they can't be number 1 overall, is they do have to replace their right guard position with Tyler Sheen. I think he's only played 3 total games where he started, so that is going to be a big spot to fill. I do know that the rest of the offensive line is elite, so I know they can cover up for the beginning of the season for him while he's kind of getting in his groove. And because I don't know what I'm going to get out of Tyler Sheen on a consistent basis, I do have to put the Eagles at number 2 overall for offensive line rankings going into 2025. And finally, at number 1, the long-awaited number 1 spot has to go to the Denver Broncos. It's pretty simple with the Denver Broncos. They finished number 1 overall in both pass block win rate and run block win rate last season. They also finished in the top 5 in pretty much every statistical category for offensive line play. So they pretty much stayed on their hot streak for the entire year and finished the same way that they started it, playing at an elite level. They also are returning their entire offensive line unit from last season, from 2024 to 2025. They're bringing back the majority of their depth pieces and backup pieces for their offensive line as well. So even if there is an injury, you're going to have the same guys filling in that you would have had in last season. As far as the starting offensive 5 went for the Broncos, no player allowed more than 3 sacks or 21 pressures on the season as a whole. Bar none, it was the best unit across the NFL for offensive line play in every single metric in every single way. And since they're bringing back, again, all of their starters and they're bringing back almost all of their depth pieces, there's no way that I can bump them any lower than pretty much how they finished last season as number 1 overall. The biggest thing for the Broncos too is that you're getting another year with Bo Nix, you're getting another year of Sean Payton with this scheme, adding more depth pieces at the offensive weapon positions. They are set up to absolutely smash as an offensive line unit going into the next season in 2025, and holistically, the Broncos offense is set up to be a top 5 offense, top 10 offense going into 2025, primarily based because of their offensive line play that they're going to get this coming year. All right, so those are my projections for the top 5 offensive line units going into 2025. Hopefully, you don't hate me after this video because your team, again, maybe not have been ranked where you wanted them to be ranked. Hopefully it gets you a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. Until then, y'all have a blessed day.